Hello everyone, Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and this week I'm continuing to talk about summer learning or summer tutoring, but in the next few videos I'm going to discuss some of the things you can do at home. So if you want to come to a tutor, I hope you get in touch with me and I can set up a program for you. However, there are lots of things that you can do on your own, so I wanted to address some of those activities that you can do at home. And the first one is read. I think this is so important. I've made videos and written some blogs about this before. But reading is so important for learning. And it's not just learning for school either. It's learning about life. It's learning about social events and activities and current events that are happening all the time. It's being an educated person, and that doesn't necessarily mean a diploma. So it's still very, very important for everyone to be able to read. And the better you can read, the more you can read, and the broader your scope in reading, the better. So spend some time reading to your child, but let your child read to you. Sit and listen sometimes. Now this can be difficult, especially if your child is not a very strong reader yet. It can be incredibly painful at times to sit and listen to someone really struggle with reading. But I don't want you to jump in too quickly. Now it's good to help, and certainly in the beginning stages they'll need a lot of help, and if they're having difficulty with reading, even when they're older, you might need to step in more often than not. But as they become a little stronger, make sure you give them enough time to work it out and struggle through it on their own. You want to be positive and helpful, but you don't want to jump in all the time and not allow the child to read. So read to the child, let the child read to you, share reading. This is especially good with stories that have a lot of dialogue or plays, so you can sort of share the characters, or you can read paragraph by paragraph or page by page. It depends on the age and reading ability of the child and the text, of course, but you can decide what will work best. In sharing the reading back and forth, you're modeling the reading as well, so the child will start to imitate to some extent your cadence, your pace, and the intonation in your voice. That's very important as well, because sometimes when people don't read out loud and they're only reading silently, they don't always understand the intonation. They don't always learn that there's a certain intonation. And sometimes children think, oh, this book is so boring. Well, they're reading it word by word by word by word by word by word. Yeah, that's boring. That's going to sound very boring. If you can get excited about the story, excited about the dialogue or what's happening in the plot, and model that for the child, he or she will begin to do that as well. Not only when reading aloud, but when they're reading silently, they're going to be able to hear these different intonations and the different pace, etc. And that will make them more and more interested in reading. The similar idea along with the modeling is just model reading. So make sure that you spend some time reading silently to yourself. And there's nothing better than sitting in a room with one or two other people, or it doesn't matter how many really, but sitting in a room and everyone is reading his or her own book or magazine or cartoon, newspaper, whatever, or e-reader, because that quiet time is so special. It doesn't always have to be noisy. It doesn't always have to be video games, television, or people debating or talking constantly. That nice silence with just the sound of the page turning or maybe your screen tapping, that's perfect, and it's a great way to model reading and how enjoyable reading can be. Once children find out just how much they can get from a book or from a magazine or from a story, they're much more motivated and inclined to read. And then when they have to read for school, it isn't such a chore, because the decoding piece and the comprehension piece, all of that starts to come together for them. And so even though they might not choose to read a science textbook or a geography textbook, when they need to, they have the skills and they're available to do it. So, pick something the child is interested in as a starting off point, but you can broaden your horizons as you continue practicing. And it's important to find the time. This is something a lot of people say, well, we don't really have the time. 15 minutes, half an hour, that's what you need each day if possible, or at least most days, say 5 days a week. It's not a huge amount of time, and the investment is well worth it, not only for the child's reading ability and increased learning ability, but also the time, the personal time you're spending with your child is really special, and they're going to remember that. They may be reluctant at first. They may not love it at first. It takes time, but you need to always stay positive, always stay up, and willing to spend the time with them, and I think that that will change. I've seen it happen over and over with students who really don't read well, or who struggle with reading, who hate reading. I never want to read. I hate this book. And at some point along the way, they find an interest, they find a key into the reading process, and they might not become super readers, but they become interested. And then that tone changes, and they start talking about the book, and they're all excited to tell you the story, to tell you what's happening. That's the other piece of reading. Reading isn't just decoding the words and pronouncing them. It's also talking about the story, comprehension, understanding what's going on. So as you read, talk about the story, talk about the plot, which are the events, what's happening. Talk about the characters, which character do you like, which one do you think you would be if you were in this book. Talk about their motivations, why do you think they did that, why do you think she said that. And also you can make predictions. What do you think's coming next? What do you think's going to happen? And that's a very good way to get the child thinking about the story and looking more deeply into what's going on. And these are the same kinds of questions or the same kinds of things that the school will be looking for, but try to make it more organic. So don't make a quiz, unless your child really loves quizzes, but don't make it a testing situation. Just make it an organic discussion. So you have a prediction, you might want to start with your prediction and see if the child has a different prediction, if they agree with your prediction. What do you think is good about what I predict? There are ways of opening up the conversation that don't seem like a test, and it doesn't seem like questions at school. You want to avoid that probably in most cases, because you don't want to turn off the child from reading. You want to encourage them and motivate them to keep reading. However, you do want to engage with them. Even if they're reading silently, you can use this method of discussion, whether you're reading to them, whether they're reading to you, whether you're sharing the reading, or whether they're reading silently. You can ask your children, what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? What do you like or dislike about the characters? What's your favorite character? All of these questions and discussions, and you need to discuss as well. Don't just ask questions. You say, well, I really like this character because she's so smart and she's always finding a solution to the problem, etc. So that there's a give and take, so that your children feel that they're actually engaging with you and having a real conversation, rather than you're the teacher and you're just quizzing them. So if they're reading silently, that's also a good opportunity for them to let you into the book that they're reading. Maybe you've never read the book, and children often love to tell adults, or tell mom and dad about what they've learned that you might not know. It's like they have a secret and you don't know about it. So they're often really willing to talk a lot more and get into it, as long as you, again, approach it in a positive way and just have a discussion rather than being the quiz master. You don't want to do that. So those are some key ideas about how to help your child over those long summer months, get them engaged in reading, and get yourself engaged in reading as well, and have some discussions about what you're reading, about what the child is reading, or about what you're reading together. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten to mention anything, but I have written a blog about this as well, and it is similar to the video, but there may be some different ideas. And I did put some links on the blog for some reading lists. There are literally probably thousands of them, hundreds for sure, but I've only put a few to help you find some reading lists. You can search, and there are lots more as well. Just to get started, first thing, of course, is to talk to your child. Find out what he or she might be interested in reading. Your children might already have a favorite author, and they can tell you who that is, and you can find them either online or order the book through your favorite bookstore, etc. You can go to used bookstores. You can go to the library. Most places have libraries. You can get books for free, and so it doesn't have to be particularly expensive. Also, if you have books are great. You can take a book almost anywhere, and you can download books to your e-reader. You can have thousands of books on your e-reader, which is just one device you can take anywhere. And it's easy to read from. They're better than, I think they're better than iPads or computers, not as hard on the eyes. But of course you can do it from iPads or other devices as well. Sorry, I'm talking and thinking at the same time. I'm sort of tripping myself up a little bit. So that's it for this week. I just want you to get into reading with your child, whichever method you use, and it may change depending on what kind of material you're reading. If it's more challenging, you may need to do more of the reading than the child, and if it's not, then maybe the child can read almost the entire book to you with only a few interventions occasionally. In the meantime, if you would like to have some lessons over the summertime, learning is fun. I love learning, and I love instilling that into the children that I teach. I'm very pleased with a student of mine who just got 90% on his essay, and he, believe me, never thought he would get a 90% on an essay, and in grade 8. So that is amazing. That's really, really good. So get in touch if you want to set up some lessons, or even if you just have a question. That's free, and my information will be below, my website, and you can check out the website and email me, or just leave a message below this video if you're watching it on YouTube in particular. And we'll talk to you later. It's Ron from L.T.L. Tutoring Central. Have an amazing week, and I'll be talking to you again next week. Bye-bye for now.